Hi there, I'm Rebecca and a really warm welcome back to my channel, PumpkinBecki. In this week's video we are going to come back and have a look at my hornbeam. I did an air layer on it about 5 months ago. Let's see what's happened. It's 24th of September and I have very much left this hornbeam alone. It had a really difficult winter. If you have a look back at the last video that featured this tree, it had suffered a lot of rodent damage, which turns out it's not a mouse, it's a vole, because I've seen it eating all the vegetables in my square foot bed. It's brazen. I don't actually think I've managed to harvest anything to eat from the square foot beds this year. It literally felled my French beans at ground level. So they were just setting pods and starting to be almost pickable, and I thought, why are they wilting? Oh, yeah, thank you, vole, who has eaten all the stems at ground level. So he is not my friend. On top of that, it's been a really difficult year weather-wise. We have had incredibly hot, sunny summer weather, which I'm sure pleased lots of people, but it's made it a very, very difficult balance for people who keep potted plants, particularly. Bonsai, for sure. My carnivorous plants have been suffering. Lack of rainwater has just been really agonising. But in the last couple of weeks we have now had some... Hello Bumblebee, what are you doing in here? You're supposed to be outside. But in the last couple of weeks we have had some decent rain. Good rain that has really started to soak into the ground, which is fantastic, not just sheet straight off. And I'm starting to see my water butt level rising again, which is a relief. So I wasn't even sure this tree was going to survive. The vole had taken off 3/4 of the width of the circumference of the bark around the trunk at the bottom, leaving me just a stupid little bit just connecting the top of the tree to the root system, and it even ate through large quantities of the root system. It had a fairly decent root ball. It was a nursery stock tree. It had been growing in a big pot. It was doing really well. Yes, I'd done a bit to the top while I tried to work out what I wanted to do with it, but no, this vole has decided he wants to be a bonsai master, and he took decisions into his own hands. Paws. Hands. So that was what he left me with, and I decided perhaps I needed to be a little bit more radical with this tree. I took the advice of some of the people who'd watched my previous video and commented on it, saying maybe I hadn't been radical enough with it. My vision for the tree was tall and light and pretty, and yeah, none of those things were going to be likely anymore. So some people had said just air layer the top off because it's too tall anyway, just air layer the top off and make 2 really nice trees. And then I thought, well, maybe if the roots die, maybe I've got a chance. If I take an air layer, I've got a chance of saving part of the tree. And as you can just about see, I have leaves. This is the air layer in here. This is sphagnum moss kept damp inside some polythene, and I've just kept sort of letting water go into that. When I've been watering the tree, I then sort of make sure some goes down the bark and into this pack, and it's still quite nice and damp in there. This is the first time I've looked at the air layer. I have left this poor tree well and truly alone. So I don't know what kind of roots I've got in there. I can see some, but it didn't look like too much, and I think I know the reason for that. Apparently I was meant to rotate the tree, maybe even on a weekly basis, to allow roots to form evenly around the trunk. I didn't do that. I put it on its stand with the other trees and I just let it be. So I may find that I've got more root development on this side than I have on this side. This is the side that was facing the sun for most of the time. The leaves on the top part are looking very pale, and in fairness the leaves at the bottom were looking pretty rubbish as well earlier in the season. It's managed to put on some nice new leaves now the summer heat's gone, and they're a much healthier colour. I didn't put any feed on this tree until I could see what it was doing. You shouldn't feed an unhealthy plant. Feeding a plant that is struggling with roots isn't going to help. It's probably actually just going to burn the roots and make it worse. So I just stayed back from doing everything. So this tree is probably lacking quite a few nutrients up at the top here, but we can address that. My big job for today is to remove this air-layered section, clean the roots gently, and pop this new tree on so that it can start its new life and the tree below can maybe start to begin its new life. So if you want to see how I took this air layer, you will need to go back and look at that first video, which is linked in the card that I showed previously. Ooh. Okay, let's come in closer. So you can see the moss, but I can also see roots. Now I don't know whether those are moss roots or tree roots. Okay. Let's see if we can carefully remove this. Yep, that's the last bit of string off. Oh my goodness, I have been making YouTube videos for 5 years now. I have just had my 5th birthday on YouTube, and I managed to leave my microphone all the way across on the bench of the greenhouse. So you probably didn't hear any of that reveal or any of that excitement. If you would like to help me get a new lav mic that I will not forget to have in my hand so I can talk to you, then please consider subscribing, liking videos, watching the adverts that are going to come up. Buy me a coffee, there's a button for that on my channel banner on the right hand side, and there's also a link in the description box of the video to buy me a coffee, and it can be a one-off donation, but anything helps. Anyway, I said ooh and ah quite a lot, and oh look, I can see roots. Don't know if they're moss roots, but I'm pretty sure they're probably, actually looking at the size of them, tree roots. I have on hand a jug of rainwater, which I'm going to be popping this in as soon as I cut it off, and I am not going to fuss with this too much at this point because these roots are so delicate They are just hanging on for dear life at the moment. They've got no strength in them at all, so we are going to do nothing with this root ball in terms of anything bonsai. Ooh, there's some even fatter ones there. I'm going to make sure I come in underneath all the roots that I can see there, which brings me just above this little branch here. And I'm going to try and do a nice clean cut. I'm going to hold the top. Ooh. There, roots. So I'm just going to dunk this straight into this jug of water. This pot was starting to get brittle and break down, so it's not got much longer left on its life, so the fact that I've just chopped the rim off does not bother me. I believe it was the original pot that this hornbeam came in, and this tree had been at the garden centre for quite some time in this pot, which is why I got it for a bargain. But by just taking that top rim down a little bit, it means I can show you what has been going on around the rest of the tree. I covered it quite generously with akadama and pumice and lava. You can see that the cut paste has all come off, and if I just gently encourage off the remaining pieces, there's actually a callus. Callus will not roll on dead tissue, so if this is dead, then we could still lose this bottom part of the tree. Deciduous trees don't really have dead wood in nature. It tends to rot away quickly. I think I'm just going to try and cover the part that is still open. And I'm just using my rainwater that my air layer is sitting in to keep the cut paste damp, because it will stick to you instead of the tree. So the idea of this is it's covering that bit that the vole decided to eat through, and then I'm going to put the akadama lava pumice back round it, remove those few weeds that I've got there. Because we're only just through summer and coming into autumn, I will put some BioGold solid feed on here just to give it a boost for winter. Well, I need another bag of that for next year. I'm going to leave this, I will cut paste it, but I'm not going to try and reduce this height anymore. I think I'm going to let that try and die back naturally, in case there is any dieback, and then look at it again in the spring. It was quite a nice clean cut. So I'm just going to make sure that I have covered everything up to the very edge of the bark. You don't need to bring it down the sides, just make sure you've covered the internal growing portions of the bark. think this is my weird root that I cut off, and that's callousing over really nicely. Cut paste will peel off when it's done its job, so you don't worry about trying to remove it. There we go. Great. I'm going to leave that alone now. I'm not going to do anything else to it. Right, let's come back to my air layering. So I've had it soaking in this pot of water, and I'm going to gently start removing some of the sphagnum moss. If there is any resistance, I'm stopping. I'm not going to go attacking this with a chopstick. I just want to very gently do this. But that's great. Look at that. I've got roots. So the moss has formed quite a nice dense mat around the tree, and so yeah, I think some of those roots are definitely the moss. I think definitely. Is that an oxymoron? Just gently, gently. It's taken me 5 months to get here. There is no point in now rushing this step and getting it wrong, because I don't get a second chance at this. And yes, I do need to remove the sphagnum moss before I think about potting this up, and the reason is that this can actually work against us once we get into a pot. This can actually start to hold on to too much moisture around the roots and cause rot, and it can sort of make the roots tend to stay in this place rather than venturing out into whatever substrate you're using around it. So yeah, it will long run hinder the development of the tree. Sloshing it in the water is definitely helping. There's a gentle action of the water is starting to loosen what's here. Well, that was nerve-wracking, but we're now at this point, so you can see that because I didn't turn the tree, because I didn't realise I needed to, I've got quite a cluster of roots here. It's quite a dense mat, whereas this side is much more sparse, but it has got roots, and so it seems like there's a fairly consistent circle of roots, which is more than I could have hoped for. Just found this little bumblebee. She's quite tired. I'm just letting her have a little drink, and then I'll pop her outside. She's still been gathering pollen, so hopefully we can get her back to her colony. Sweet pea. So I actually think I'm going to use one of these terracotta flower pots that I like to use for my sempervivum. The reason being it's still quite shallow by flower pot standards. It's got a nice big drainage hole. The Japanese training pots that are made from terracotta have little feet notched out. This doesn't, but it will be on a stand, so water shouldn't clog round it. It should just drain through. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. What I haven't got here is any holes for wire, and this tree is quite tall, so it is going to need something to help hold it into the pot. I've just made myself a little twist of wire which has 2 legs. Hopefully they're going to be long enough. They go through the drainage mesh, out of the hole and onto the bottom, and then putting pressure on the inside, I'm just going to bend them back nice and flat. Perfect. And that holds our drainage mesh in nice and securely. And then cut a piece of this pretty chunky wire. And wrap some thinner wire around it. So it looks a bit like that. And I'm going to push those long tails up into the pot. And the bar of really thick wire should stop these tails pulling through. I've got quite a stump here that doesn't have any root on it, although I can see nodules starting to form a little bit higher up. So what I'll do is sort of sink that down into the Akadama pumice lava mixture, and I'll just sort of encourage these pieces to lay a little bit more evenly around. I don't want them all to sort of keep growing downwards or round and round. I also don't want to break them. These roots are too delicate to be able to secure the tree like you would normally with a tie-down wire. So I am actually going to wrap these wires around the tree like that. That's enough just to hold it. Then I'll backfill with more Akadama lava pumice. Make sure the roots are still sort of carefully flaring, and then we're done. You know how normally with bonsai you would spend ages tapping down? We're not doing that today. We're going to tap the pot, we're going to do other things, but we do not want to break those roots. Then I'm actually going to take the old sphagnum moss that I took off the top. Yeah, I could get more, but I haven't got any at the moment. And with it nice and damp, first actually let's pour this water onto what we've got. And then because I need to keep this mound of roots, which is currently exposed, really nice and moist, I am going to pack the moss back onto the top. That will help it stop being such a shock that we have done what we've done. Seems a bit counterintuitive that we've taken it away from the root ball, but this is protective, whereas around the root ball it's done its work. We don't need it there anymore, so I don't think I'm going to need to totally cover the top. I just want to really make sure that that exposed clump of fine feeding roots is covered, stays damp, and hopefully eventually it will start to creep its way down. While we're here, I'm going to remove the wires that were still on, being careful not to dislodge the tree. Autumn is the time for vascular tissue growth, so trunks and branches are going to want to start to thicken, and if you've got tight wires on them, then you will start to leave dents. I'm actually supporting the tree just above soil level. I'm actually surprised that the tree managed to maintain as much top growth as it did through the summer, considering the damage that was done to the roots and the fact that I was trying to do an air layering. Now, Biogold is such a high quality feed that it doesn't tend to produce lots of broken down crumbly bits at the bottom of the bag, but I think some would be ideal here because they will start to get into the soil and the tree much quicker than the chunks will tend to break down. So that's 2 trees for the price of a bargain. I'm going to look after them really carefully. I'm going to make sure they are out of any direct wind, particularly this one which has 0 roots to keep it upright. I'm going to make sure they stay nice and damp. I'm going to make sure they're not in direct sunlight, just keep them generally a bit more protected. Over winter they will come into the greenhouse, and I'll put them up on the top staging so that my little vole friend can't get at them, because I don't want that happening again, thank you. And right, that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to me here on YouTube, and until next time, bye!